Hi, this is Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters. You see, I'm wearing my Winston Zedmore jumpsuit from the movie. Okay? I have two pieces of advice. Don't go out there, and who you going to call?
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. I really appreciate all the support. We took kind of a week off last week due to some unforeseen circumstances. We did it, but we dropped a couple interviews for y'all. We hope you really enjoyed them and liked them. Before we get into tonight's film review, I just want to give a quick shout out to our social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to stay connected with us or, ask us questions, chit chat with us, just search for us on there. We'll always try and reply to you. And check out our website, don'tgoooutthere.com. We got all our episodes, interviews, our vlog, our store, and we also have a new addition to the website that Brother Mike is going to tell you about. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so we've touched on this in the past, but we get all the time. Since we don't do Patreon, how can you help support our show? Well, this is the way. We partnered officially with Loot Crate. It's a subscription box service where if you sign on any of their boxes, whether it be the Fright Box, Pop Culture Box, there's all kinds of stuff. Saved by the Bell stuff. I know there's some Star Wars stuff I've seen. There's all kinds of stuff you can get on Loot Crate. Whatever you decide to use our code BF15. That's B as in Busters, which is a hint at the show that we're about to record. F as in Franklin, the richest man on this ship, show. And 15 for the amount of movies that Nico has seen or the amount of money that Mike has in his back pocket. $15, that is.
That's millions.
No. Just $15. But that'll get you 15% off. Just go to our website or lootcrate.com. Make sure you get that code in so our show gets the credit. We're also giving away a free personalized picture with our show logo. So just message us, whether that be the Don't Go Out There account or I don't know if Nico's on Twitter at the moment, but myself, Brian, and Dustin are all on Twitter. You can find us there. However, you need to get a hold of us. Make sure you let us know you used our code, and we'll get you a personalized picture. That's BF15. This really helps us out. We're really excited about our partnership with Loot Crate.
All right, I need to address them. I'm tired of this. I've seen more than 15 movies, damn it.
Who are you going to call? Oh, sorry.
15 non-horror movies. Now that's a challenge.
I've seen 15 non-horror movies. I'm tired of this crap.
Who are you going to call? Loot Crate. Use our code BF15 when you do.
There you go. That was nice. That was a nice plug. All right. After last week, we're jumping back into our film reviews night, and we're still in our horror comedy month. And we're taking on a movie that I'm very intimidated by, not because it's really hard to take notes on, but I know two of our co-hosts absolutely love and adore this movie. We're taking on Brother Brian's pick, Ghostbusters. Brian, let's hear I want to hear your story, man. Why do you like this movie so much? Go ahead and tell me.
Man, like I said, it's no secret. This is not only my favorite genre movie, like this is my favorite movie of all time, just period. I don't think it's nostalgia because, I've seen this so many times, like through so many different lenses and ages that I've seen it hundreds of times. And it's honestly like, to me, just the perfect movie. With that said, it's one of the most overwhelming movies I've ever done and reviewed here on this just because of that. Because, I've seen this movie, like I said, hundreds of times, and I can quote almost like every line of it and can talk for just hours about it. So it's hard to take notes here because I found myself having problems like stopping. I think this movie it's just a work of art to me. It has an amazing cast. If you really want to go in depth with behind the scenes, it's almost a happy accident, how it all even came together like it did. I love especially how it takes itself seriously. It hits that wonderful blend, like we kind of talked about last week, of comedy and science and horror. And, because Aykroyd actually really believes in this paranormal stuff. So, a lot of it hits, it toes that line. You know, and I love how it's, you know, that dry, sarcastic humor that I like, and it's just like I said, a work of art that's 37 years old this year, and I think it still just works exceedingly well. And you know, obviously, I wasn't old enough. I was 1 year old whenever this came out in the theater, and actually in the 25th or the 30th anniversary, they re-released it in the theaters, and I went and saw it again recently. And actually, I was very disappointed with seeing it in the theaters because my Blu-ray at home was more crystal clear and sharp than I was getting on the theater. So I can't say much from a theater experience with this one.
All right. I'll just go ahead and go next. I'm not in the same boat as Brian, honestly. I don't love this movie by any means. I think it's okay at best, honestly. Um, I think Bill Murray has a charm about him that is just great. I think just I don't know, just every time I just look at Bill Murray, just his facial expressions or the way he delivers line, I think he's great. I think the cast is great. They have great chemistry. You got Sigourney Weaver. She's awesome. But I just don't think that this movie is the kind of comedy that I personally love. But I don't hate this movie by any means. But I'm not going to crap on it or nothing. It's just not my personal favorite, honestly. And I hope I don't disrespect Brian and Dustin. Dustin, you want to tell your story now why you love it?
Yeah, I actually am in the same boat as Brian. I fucking love this movie. Ghostbusters has always been one of my favorite movies. It's in my top 5 favorite all-time movies, alongside White Man Can't Jump, Tombstone, Coming to America, and Scarface. That's my top 5. I've never said that on here. But that's my favorite movies of all time. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason Ghostbusters up there. It's a timeless classic. I think that if you compare it to it's what's the word I'm looking for? The other movies that came out in the out in the era, it held up a lot better. It transitioned a lot better to the new. The effects are kind of whatever, but as far as the storyline, the acting, the delivery, the humor, a lot of the humor from the 80s and late 70s, early 80s is very dated and borderline offensive these days. Ghostbusters now, while Vinkman does tiptoe the line of that pervy college professor, I don't think there's too much offensive things that come out of his mouth or anything. I love this movie. I wanted to be a Ghostbuster when I was a little kid. I wanted to catch Slimer. I was terrified of the Stay Puft Man. I love the cartoon. I love the. I didn't love the sequel as much as the first one, I'll admit. And by the sequel, I do not mean the one that we don't acknowledge. But yeah, it's just this movie is one of those movies I remember watching when I was like, you have those memories from your childhood that you can't put an age on how old you were when it happens, but you know it has to be one of your earliest memories. Watching this is up there. Watching this and watching Beetlejuice actually are some of the earliest memories that I have, and I love both of those movies. This one more so, but it's just always been a movie that's very near and dear to my heart.
Same.
All right, it's not very often on this show we get to review a movie that I saw before the age of like 17, so that's great. I've been watching this movie my entire life as well. I've seen it, guy. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen it. Now there had been some distance between the last time I watched it and this previous time for this review. So I'd say it's been at least 5 to 8 years since the last time I actually sat down and watched the entire film. I'll watch a clip here and there on YouTube because there's some funny fucking lines in this movie. Bill Murray is great. Rick Moranis is just an unsung hero in this movie. He is so damn funny. I said it in our group chat earlier, and I still mean it. He's great. Sigourney Weaver is great. There's some really good in this movie. There's some things I don't think hold up all that well. The effects are bad. I know it's 1984. I try not to judge too harshly. We've seen movies on this show the effects are a lot worse, and so I try not to critique it too much, although there are some scenes where it takes me out of it. But the comedy, I think, does stand up, even though the stuff that Dustin mentioned, I still think that stuff's funny. Like you said, Vinkman does kind of border on that pervy college professor guy that's kind of it's tiptoeing the line, but I think he does a great job. I think Dan Aykroyd's good, but there are certain things about this movie that lose me. I think there's just a chunk of the movie that kind of dips, and then it picks back up when Slimer is introduced. I think the ending I have a little bit of an issue with, but we'll get to that. But I do think overall, just a really solid movie. I mean, there's a reason it's so beloved. There's a reason it's a classic. There's a reason that Brian and Dustin love it. They grew up on it, but I don't think it's just nostalgia. I think I don't have that nostalgia for it like they do, but I do enjoy it. I grew up watching it. My dad likes this movie, which is very rare for this show. He normally hates everything else we talk about, so I'm sure he'll be interested to know my opinion on this movie. But again, like Dustin, don't like the sequel that much. I think it kind of takes everything bad about the first one and turns the volume up. There's a lot more physical humor in this second one, and that's just not my cup of tea. But the first one, dialogue humor, the one-liners just coming at you with Bill Murray and Rick Moranis being I know he was intentionally funny, but I say unintentionally because there is no way that man meant to be that funny delivering those lines. There's no fucking way. He is great. And 1984 Sigourney Weaver, call me sometime.
Oh, and real quick, peers is the word that I was looking for earlier when my CTE took over. It holds up better than its peers. So there we go.
Hey, let's hope your CTE turns out better than Aaron Hernandez's. All right, let's review this movie.
Not looking good, pal. Let's go.
It depends on Nico's rating of this movie, probably.
Oh boy. All right.
Oh,
I feel another Cabin in the Woods coming on. Anywho, I'm very intimidated by my scene by scene for this because, like I said, two of my co-hosts adore this movie, so I hope I did it justice. But let's jump into it. The film starts with an outside shot of New York Library and a close-up of a lion statue. We follow this librarian as she pushes her cart of books. She goes down into another room full of books, and we see like books moving from shelf to shelf on their own. She walks past the card files, and we see the drawers open, and they start flying all over the room. And she starts to run down other aisles of books. She rounds a corner, and we see a light, and a gust of wind blows, and she screams. We get a title card and the Ghostbusters theme, and I forgot to mention that the Ghostbusters theme is awesome. I will say that. Now at the University Paranormal Studies Laboratory, Venkman burn in hell, the door says. Peter Venkman is doing a test on a male and female subject where they guess like these shapes on cards, and if you get it wrong, you get shocked by electricity. He's only doing it to get closer to women. The guy is always wrong, even if he guesses right, and the chick is always right regardless. The male subject gets pissed off and storms out. Peter now goes to make his move on the lady, and Ray storms in with big news. Peter is pissed, but Ray says 10 people witness an apparition, and they have to go check it out. Peter asks the lady to come back at 8, and Bill Murray does a great, I'll see you at 8 or something like that. It was great. They get to the library and unite with Egon. He says this is big and something is definitely here. They interview the librarian now, and Peter asks if any of her family have mental issues, then if she uses drugs or alcohol, and then asks if she's menstruating. Egon says, come on, it's moving, referencing the PKE meter. They go in the room the librarian had her encounter. They walk the aisles and see a giant stack of books just like the Philadelphia mass turbulence of 1947. No human would stack books like this, Peter says sarcastically. They see the mess of the cards and find ectoplasmic residue, and Egon wants to analyze it. They follow the PKE meter, and a shelf almost crashes on them. They turn a corner and see the apparition. Full torso apparition, and it's real. Peter asks, what do we do? And Ray says we need to speak to it. Peter approaches and asks where it's from originally, and he gets shushed. Ray has a new plan, and they creep to it, and the apparition makes a scary face and roars at them, and they run out. They're asked what was it after they run out, and Peter says, I'll get back to you. Peter and Ray discuss what this means for the university. Egon says they could catch ghosts and hold them indefinitely. Peter asks if he's serious about that. The three see the dean in their lab and are told the university has revoked grants and they've lost funding. And he tells Dr. Venkman he's a poor scientist, and he basically roasts the shit out of him. All right, Brian, what's your thought on the two opening scenes of your favorite movie?
Hey, you did great, by the way, Nico. You did great.
I'm nervous, man. I haven't been as nervous since Heather Langenkamp.
Oh man, I love these opening scenes of the library. Which actually the upstairs scenes were filmed in the actual New York Public Library, and they actually I think they only let them allow the film crew in until like 10 a.m. But the downstairs scenes were actually filmed at the Los Angeles Public Library. So just a little tidbit. But yeah, I love this opening though. I mean, there's always something spooky about libraries, aren't there? I mean, to me, like, is that something the youth is going to miss out on? Are they going to even know what libraries are? I don't know. Let's bring them back for the the spook factor or whatever. But the fucking Dewey Decimal System makes its return. Um, anyway, I love the opening in the library. The cards, I think the effects still hold up to me, and busting into the theme song, shit, I love that. And it's pretty well known that the role of Peter was written by Aykroyd with John Belushi actually in mind, but he died during filming. And we know Murray, man. That Joker's before this. He was in Caddyshack, another one of my personal favorites. 4 years prior to this, but I think that this movie definitely helped increase his star power. There's no doubt, on the big screen anyway. Um, the sexual obscenities were actually originally scripted to be written on Venkman's door, but Reitman toned it down a bit and decided to go with Burn in Hell. And this opening card scene, I mean, it does to me like what this movie I think does so well with that whole, like I talked about earlier, the blending of the science and the comedy. And I think it establishes it early on here, and it takes something like this experiment, which is like a real set of experiments called the Ryan experiments, and then it takes like someone with a supposedly like a PhD as a scientist, and it shows you that it's going to take it seriously, and then it's boom, it's not going to take it seriously, and then but then again, like it stops just short of a parody, it's not like Naked Gun or something, straight parody. So again, I think that's what I think works so well here. I mean, shit's so funny, especially like when the guy actually gets it right and he still buzzes his ass. He did it, and it was for $5. Um, but also there's almost no scenes in this movie at all that did not have improv in it. By the way, almost the entire thing, actually, according to Reitman, was improv. And this card scene here is no exception. Um, uh, and lastly, like there were several shots of them actually being thrown off campus that were cut, but I like the pacing here, and I can't imagine anything else really being cut or being in the movie. And I I use listen, you smell something pretty much all the time in my daily life. And I mean, we talked about the effects earlier, but the effects on the librarian ghost, I think here definitely still hold up, and I think it looks pretty damn well, here today even. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Ghost in the Library. It's probably the best effect of the movie as far as just holding up. It looks like a ghost in any other movie I've ever seen. So I think that holds up pretty well. I tend to agree with you. I like the scene in the library. It's a little over the top, but I think it's because we're so used to watching horror movies that we forget that some of this stuff is just silly. It's supposed to be fucking silly. And I think that it takes itself just seriously enough where it's not a parody. So I'm invested. Yeah, but again, I love this opening scene with Bill Murray. He's fantastic in this card scene. Even the stuff on the door, Burn in Hell, makes me laugh because I always forget it's there until I watch it, and I'm like, God, that's funny. But just look, is he a pig? Yes. Does some of this stuff age not that great? Yeah, fine, whatever. It's still fucking funny. The levels of hitting on her that he goes to, where he lies about this, the squiggly line card, and still, shocks the guy. $5. We paid you, didn't we? Yeah, $5 fucking. Piss off, Bill. That's what I would have said. Anyway, no, but I love that Dan Aykroyd's an accidental cockblock. This is the most, to me, interesting character Dan Aykroyd's ever played, because it's very not Dan Aykroyd to me. Very not over the top. Very mellow's not the right word, but it's just a different character. I think he does it very, very well. He kind of plays. I heard this somewhere, and I don't remember exactly where I heard it, but he almost plays like the Ghostbusters mascot or something. It's a very different character for Dan. I'm used to seeing him in Blues Brothers and shit, and we are two wild and crazy guys. Like, I'm used to that. and here he's just kind of a nerd. But I like it. It works really well. I like all of these. I like all these opening scenes. I think they give you the idea of what we're about to get into. Them getting kicked off campus is really damn funny. The line about menstruation, I'm just gonna tell you, I watched that recently with my girlfriend, and I don't think she thought it was as funny as I did. But I thought it was pretty damn good. No, all in all, really funny set of opening scenes. I love when Bill comes up. I'm just gonna call them by their real names because movie names sometimes leave me. But when he comes up behind Rambus and he's got the headphones on and he's doing and he slams the thing down on the desk, I just did that for sound effect. I think that's really funny as well. So really good opening set of scenes.
Yeah, I love the opening as well. I love that we don't have to wait to experience the supernatural. They don't waste any time. They just, as soon as we're in the library and then shit starts happening. Too often time in movies they have this drawn out introduction to what's going on in the movie. They introduce you all the characters and give you their backstories, and then we get to see it. And I like that this one just jumps right to the shits. Bill Murray is just, I mean, God, we have to give him his respects as one of the all-time greats of comedy, right? I mean, everything he does is funny. His delivery is what makes him so good, and he's done it in every movie he's ever been in. I mean, from Kingpin to even when he played Bill Murray in Zombieland, like everything that Bill Murray has ever done has been great. So just I want to take a second to shout out to him. Now I do want to say also that's a very smooth move. That is a page out of the Dustin Franklin playbook as far as letting the girl think that she's getting all these right, and to make her feel like she's got these powers and make the girl feel real good to. Oh, God, this makes me sound awful. But anyway, I really like his delivery there with the ladies. And yeah, I agree with what Mike said. It is the unintentional cock block was hilarious because he really was just being genuine. Hey, we got to that's funny because we've all experienced that in our real lives. Our friends just coming in at the worst opportune time and not really picking up on your hints to fuck off. But the line with the menstruation. Are you currently menstruating? I did read actually that there is a reason for that. There have been some psychological studies that have shown that women while menstruating have a heightened susceptibility to ESP, and that I don't know that that's true, but that is something I read when I was looking into this movie, and so there apparently was some thought behind that line. It wasn't just him being crass, but if you take it that way, it makes it even funnier to me. But and then we get the classic line, "Back off, man! I'm a scientist." Like that shit. Again, shout out to Peter Venkman. The effects in this movie aren't as bad as some of the other movies we've seen, but they do age. They are dated when you watch it back. I've watched this movie a couple times in the past week or so. And yeah, 2021 special effects would look a lot better.
Ray tells Peter MIT or Stanford won't touch them now after this disaster. Peter says he believes in destiny and they need to go into business themselves. They share a drink and have no clue where they will get the money. Ray takes out a third mortgage on his house, 19% and $95,000 just in interest the first 5 years. Not bright. Professional paranormal investigations and elimination is the vision Peter has. The guys check out their building, and Egon says it needs to be condemned. Ray loves it because of like the firefighter pole and thinks they should spend the night. I think we'll take it, Peter tells the realtor. Now we meet Dana, who just crosses the street way too casually. She's greeted by her neighbor Lewis, who talks too much about his workout and offers her some mineral water. He invites her to his party and describes how strange he was peeking into her room from the windowsills or whatever, and he was peeking into her room. Then he locks himself out of his apartment. Dana sees the Ghostbusters commercial and turns the TV off. She puts her groceries on the counter, and the egg carton opens, and they crack and start to fry on her counter. She hears a noise from the fridge. She opens it and sees a demonic dog-like creature that roars Zool at her, and she screams and runs. Back at their building, they have a Ghostbusters sign out and Ray comes back with a real lemon of a car for $4,800. Peter asks Janine if they've gotten any calls or customers. He then tells her to work and calls her Bug Eyes. Egon pops from underneath her desk and she tells him of her hobbies, and then he says he collects spores and fungus. Dana enters the Ghostbusters headquarters. Peter takes a liking to her very quickly. She tells her she tells her story, and Egon says she's telling the truth. The three start to name off their theories. Ray volunteers to check the records of the building, and Egon says he'll research the name Zool. And then Peter says he'll go back to her apartment and check her out. I mean, the apartment. Peter and Dana get to the apartment and he looks around. He tortures the spirit by tickling some ivories. He goes into the bedroom and says, "What a crime," after she says nothing happens in there. She says he doesn't act like a scientist and more like a game show host, which was an ad-lib line by Sigourney. He goes into the kitchen and sees the fried eggs and checks out the fridge. He opens it slowly and asks about all the junk food. She tells of the flaming building, the creatures, and hearing Zool. He says he's not getting any reading. She says she's either got a monster in her kitchen or she's crazy. Peter starts to try and charm her by saying he's in love with her, and she says how odd he is, and she slowly pushes him out the door. He tries one last time for a kiss, and then she slams the door in his face. All right, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, again, something a lot of people already know, but the exterior shots of the firehouse are from Hook and Ladder 8 in New York City. Still a working firehouse today, actually. They actually still have the Ghostbusters 2 sign inside. And actually, the interior shots are from a firehouse in LA, which was also used in other movies, kind of like I think The Mask was one of them for sure. Um, we talked about this off air, but Louis Tully, was written for John Candy, which you can definitely see in the character some. But apparently, Candy wanted him to have like a German accent and like two trained dogs with him all the time. It's kind of bizarre, but nobody really felt like that was kind of right for the character, so they just mutually parted ways, and the role went to Moranis, who, let me just say, like, I don't know if we'll ever do another movie with Moranis again, but this guy is a class act. Like, he quit acting after the death of his wife to like raise his kids at like the height of his career. And it's just, look, there's not very many super respectable human beings in the acting business that you really hear about. So I just wanted to point that out right there. Um, Julia Roberts actually auditioned for the role of Dana Barrett, but Weaver was so perfect. Like she actually said that she had experience with Alien and big budget films, and when she was sent this, she actually saw a chance to like show her acting prowess a little bit, and actually did the whole scene of her transforming into a terror dog and stuff for the audition. So obviously, I think she did amazing. Obviously, um, there's a bit of continuity mistake here, I think, with the eggs when they pop out, cook on the counter. They actually move around some depending on whether it's a wide or close-up shot. But again, it's great practical effects. I think obviously that would have been done with CG nowadays, but it wouldn't have looked as good to me as they do here. And also you see those Stay Puft Marshmallow bag next to it, like a little foreshadowing there. So and we get intro to Annie Potts. I love her, American Sweetheart. She was on what's that show she's in now? Young Sheldon. I think that's what she's on right now. She's the grandma on Young Sheldon. But again, the chemistry just between Murray, Weaver, and her apartment, which, by the way, that tool he's using actually a tool to locate gas leaks, but I think it's referred to a gas. I said I think, but I know because I'm a nerd. It's referred to as a ghost sniffer, which again, like it's not like paranormal meeting paranormal stuff in here. It's like real everyday things that's modified to add that realism, and I really think I like it. I really like that a lot about it. And lastly, like when he flicks those fingers over the keys of the piano, the tune that plays, which actually doesn't match his finger movements whatsoever, but it's the same. It's the same tune that plays in The Shining when Danny tries to sneak into his parents' bedroom and find Jack. So that was a nice little tidbit there. Go ahead.
First of all, this set of scenes, Bill Murray is the star of the show. Like, I know I gave Rick Moranis his flowers, and he's pretty good in the little nervous, awkward scene he's in here too. But it is clear as day the lead was chosen right here. And I know there's a lot of people that were going to be cast in this movie. You mentioned John Candy. Eddie Murphy had a role written for him. I'm kind of glad that didn't happen. because to me it makes it just another Eddie Murphy movie from the 80s, and I think that would have been a bad choice. As great as Eddie Murphy is, and it would have been hilarious, but it wouldn't have been just another Eddie Murphy 80s movie to me. But come back to the set of scenes. I think Sigourney Weaver is great. The chemistry with her and Bill is really good. It's funny. It's kind of interesting to see her in a role like this, because normally when I watch Sigourney Weaver on screen, she's playing a badass, ripping the heads off of aliens and all this other stuff, or she's running Camp Green Lake, one or the other. So it's kind of interesting to kind of see her in a more laid back role until she turns into a dog anyway. Again, I really like the set of scenes because the dialogue is where the humor is. It's not the physical comedy, it's the dialogue. The scene where they're trying to look for a quote unquote office building and they're sliding down the poles. That's kind of funny. Hey, is this pole still working? They're all doing it really slow. They're like opposite strippers. It's the complete opposite. Just really, really good. And the set of scene, once Dana comes into the new Ghostbusters office or whatever you call that, she's great. The interaction is great. First of all, what's the problem with the eggs cooking by themselves? God damn, that's good shit. I would not even call them. I would have let that keep going. What's ain't no problem. Ain't no problem. Cook my eggs, Zool. Zool, if you like to cook eggs, I will let you cook my fucking eggs. That's all I'm saying. And Zool's kind of a cool name. I mean, it's not something I'd name my own kid, but if my friend was Zool, I'd be like, "What's up, Zool?" or "What's up, Z?" I'd probably go Z for short because Zool's kind of weird, but I mean that's kind of cool. So I feel like Dana was really in over her head here. Should have just chilled back and let things play. Now she has some perv in her apartment. It kind of works for him, but still, actually, it kind of doesn't work for him a little bit. But anyway, I really like the set of scenes. The dialogue carries these scenes to me. And there's a couple effects here and there that are. I said it in my opening. I hate to critique effects from 1984 because we've look. The effects in 1994 and a lot of movies we've watched from that year, which, by the way, what a year for fucking movies. I know we've talked about this before, but Nightmare on Elm Street, Ghostbusters, in there Child's Play. So, the effects in the other two that I mentioned, they're not great, but we still kind of love those. So I hate to hold that against Ghostbusters, and I think this set of scenes is it's really funny. I like that it's dialogue driven.
Yeah, the dialogue is really what makes this whole movie, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a good movie in its own right. The plot's good, but the dialogue and the acting is incredible.
It's the reason I don't like the sequel as much because I feel like it's not as dialogue driven.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree though. I like the effects with the eggs, like the fact that given the time period and the technology available, I thought that was really well done. But going back to the firehouse when they get there and Spengler's so apprehensive because of the price and the logistics side of it. But by God, as soon as Raymond found that fire pole, he was all in. They had no other choice. They had to get it. I love the excitement on him because it's really such a stark contrast between Raymond and Spengler because they're the two nerds of the group, right? Like Venkman and then Winston, once he joins, they're the more cool characters, I guess. Winston's just in it for a paycheck. He don't give a shit about none of this. Venkman's just, wanting to use science to get ladies. He don't really give a shit about none of this. But you got Raymond and you got Spengler, who are the nerds of the bunch. And so, but they're so opposite though, because Spengler he actually made it a point, Harold Ramis made it a point to not smile. He chose when he decided to play the role, he was not going to smile the entirety of the film. And so you get that serious side from him. And then Raymond's such like a little kid at heart, but he's just a nerdy little kid. I love that. I love the dynamic between the four Ghostbusters. And man, Peter is such an opportunist. I was just like taking notes on him this whole film because the way he volunteered to go check out the apartment. Now look, Sigourney Weaver is not my cup of tea, but if she were, then yeah, hell yeah, I'd volunteer to check out that apartment. I love how persistent he was though, and she's like, up until the very end, he tried to sneak one kiss in. I love the persistency there. And a fun fact about the name Zool. So there's actually a brewery here in Knoxville called Zool, but it's Xul, and the U has the 2 dots over top, whatever that's called. And I told someone that we were reviewing this movie, and she said, "You want to go to Zool to have a beer?" And so that was funny. It was like that, just even though it's spelled differently, you hear Zool and you think of Ghostbusters. And Brian, you brought up the sniffer there. Murray actually chose that. They had a bunch of gag props that they could choose for their tool, and I love that Bill Murray chose the sniffer specifically himself. But yeah, my favorite part about this movie to me is that, and maybe I'm biased because I love the movie, but to me, none of it is wasted motion. None of it drags. I'm interested. Every character that we're introduced to has a necessary role in the film. Everyone is important and in their own right. And I love that it's captivating. Like there's no downtime in this film to where I'm bored with this. And that's the biggest sin a movie can have, is to let the viewer get bored. And that's what makes this movie such a classic, is because even this set of scenes, in the scene that might not be as important to the plot line, the dialogue's so good that it keeps your attention. And so another great way to follow up the first 2 scenes.
Back at headquarters, they toast over some Chinese food and Budweiser, and they reveal and Ray says they have no more petty cash. Janine gets a call and tells them, "We got one." She sounds the alarm and they go down the fire pole and get dressed to go to battle. They load up in the Ectomobile and get to the Sedgwick Motel. The hotel manager greets them in a panic and says the guests are starting to ask questions. It's the 12th floor and it's been okay, but up until 2 weeks ago. Peter tells the guests they're just exterminators. They get out of the elevator and blast the hotel maid in a scare, and Peter casually just apologizes to her. Ray says to split up. Ray sees a green ghost blob, which is the Slimer, eating the leftover food on a cart. He calls for Venkman. He shoots at it and it runs off. Peter sees the ghost now and calls for Ray on the radio. It charges Peter, and when Ray finds him, he says, "It slimed me." Egon calls for Ray and says it's in the ballroom now. The 3 enter and close the staff off from entering. They find the ghost near a chandelier and they shoot their proton packs at it. And sorry, Brian, if I get any of these equipments wrong. I'm sorry, brother.
No, you're
Egon
doing
now
great. You're
tells
doing
them
great.
to Egon now tells them to not cross the streams. Total protonic reversal. They see the ghost drinking all the wine and shoot at it again. They clear a space for Ray to lay the trap down. Egon and Peter shoot the ghost and they trap it. They exit the room. We came, we saw, we kicked its ass, Peter says. Ray tells them what it was, and Peter tells him it cost $5,000, and they say they'll release it if they don't pay. He hands the manager the bill, and they leave victoriously. Dana is doing some sit-ups and sees the news reporting on the Ghostbusters. More Ghostbusters theme song as we see them answering calls and taking on jobs. We even get a cameo from Larry King. Rest in peace. The Ghostbusters are making headlines. Peter says 24/7, no job or fee too big. Ray has a dream now that a spirit woman is in his room and takes off his pants and gives him that good cross-eyed sloppy head. A man enters the building to apply for a job. Don't interrupt me while I'm reading, guys.
This movie's rated PG, for God's sake.
Where am I at?
Sloppy head.
If you're watching on YouTube, please don't report us.
A man enters the building to apply for a job,
Job.
and Janine asks if he believes in a bunch of different stuff. He says, "I'll believe in anything for a steady paycheck." Ray hires Winston immediately. Dana and a violinist are walking, and she ditches him when she sees Peter. He says she's the best in her row, like in her symphony. She asks if he has any information on her case. He says the name Zul is a reference to a demigod. Zul was the dominion of Gozer. He asked her for a date Thursday night. Peter says he's making a special exception for her, and she accepts finally. He yells and apologizes to the violinist he didn't get to meet him, and he starts to dance by the fountain. All right, Brian, go ahead, brother. This episode's a train wreck. I'm so sorry.
Well, this group of scenes is actually my favorite in the movie, I think. At the Sedgwick, it's it's the first time you get to see that guys in action. Michael Ensign, who actually played the hotel manager so brilliantly, actually auditioned for Walter Peck originally, but had to settle for his role. And honestly, I think he would have played a good Peck as well. But I think he fits here just brilliantly. So many great lines here in this group of scenes, and just iconic. He's looking at me, Ray. It's also a little known fact, despite being such a widely known tool. Obviously, the proton packs are only seen for under 2 minutes of total airtime in the whole movie. And I think that those effects still hold up today. All the effects on the proton blasters, anyway. I do anyway. Um, there's a scene cut here that had newlyweds discovering Slimer, which Slimer was never really named until I believe the cartoon that followed this, but he was actually made to resemble as much as possible John Belushi, and was made on kind of made based on his Animal House picking out scene as sort of like an homage to Belushi, who had died just shortly before this got underway. So I thought that was pretty cool, but this is so brilliantly done here with, again, just so many damn one-liners. The whole we saw, we kicked its ass, and this montage with the Ray Parker theme song playing, which, by the way, I own a ton of those reproductions of those magazines used here. And like you mentioned, we get Larry King, rest in peace. But almost all of these shots were actually shot due to no budget, like at real crowds, and with no permits to shoot in New York either. So a lot of the crowd reactions real, including a guy behind the reporter in one of the scenes with the beard, and there's a real security guard in one of them that actually starts chasing them. Just kind of curious as to where they were shooting, I guess. But later you get this fantastic shot, of the Ecto One going over the Brooklyn Bridge, which was actually like the ending of a scene that was cut, but was used in this montage, which was Ray getting his blowy from the ghost. That was actually like Ray and Winston were investigating a call and had actually fallen asleep or something there. And anyway, they used the footage there for this little montage. So that was a little tidbit. And friend of the show, Ernie Hudson, he's so great. He did the intro for this episode. He's probably one of the most reachable of any of the cast. He loves to be part of this movie. He actually accepted this role after, like Mike mentioned, Eddie Murphy left to go do Beverly Hills Cop. And apparently he was, the day before Hudson was given a shooting script where Winston was reduced to this like small role, but since Eddie left, and I guess they didn't have the faith in Hudson that they did with Murphy, but they just expanded Murray's role, which, I mean, it all worked out, but like they weren't even sure Murray was even going to show up day one of shooting for this movie, apparently, and that's an entirely different story, and I've talked enough, but Hudson has a bigger role in the second movie, but I do love how Dustin mentioned he plays a straight man in this, and by that I mean, like, hey, if there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say. I love that. And last thing I'll say, though, this scene where this ends up with Peter and Dana, by the fountain, the violinist that walks out with Dana, it's kind of almost implied, and it's actually pretty wildly accepted that, like, although it's never really said that he's the one that she dates on and off and talks about earlier in the film, but also like the one who fathers her baby in part two, Oscar, who, by the way, I'm really kind of hoping Paul Rudd's character, that's who I hope is grown up Oscar in the third one that's coming out this year, by the way. But anyway, you can tell Weaver was actually cracking up just a bit with Murray in this scene, and I think they left it in. But anyway, that's all I had, Mike.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Brian. This is my favorite set of scenes because it's the first time we get to see the four or the the Ghostbusters, the three in action. And I think that scene is great. They get the call, they slide down the pole like they're fucking firefighters, which cracks me up every time. I love when they're about to get on the elevator, and this it must be a pretty big cockroach. That line cracks me up every time. God, Bill Murray is so good there as far as just like we're exterminators, just playing it so dry. Like it's really really good. You mentioned the Belushi facts. I won't get into it, but I watched the movies that made us on Netflix, and that guy talked about I didn't really change anything. I just said I did, and they're like, oh, great, looks just like John Belushi. So I thought that was kind of a fun fact there. This movie, Again, watched it with my girlfriend. She'd never seen it before, and I think the cross streams thing was kind of a thumbs down for her, but I still think it's pretty funny. I think the humor there is exactly what it's supposed to be, and there's nothing wrong with a little phallic humor. It's all right to have dick joke here and there, little cross streams, especially in 1984. So I'm okay with that. I love this scene with Slimer. Slimer's a cool looking ghost. I've always thought that. I love I think he can hear you when they're talking to each other. It's so golly. The amount of humor in this set of scenes gets me. It's why it's my favorite. I love the scene where they catch him. I think it's really, really well done. I think the effects are pretty good there. As far as that goes, actually catching the ghost is good. The $5,000 stuff is so it's classic. I know it's 4, but then he adds the 1,000, and then it's 5,000. I think it's fantastic. It's like, I didn't know it would be that much. I won't pay it. Well, I guess we'll put this ghost back. That's so good. I always forget there's a fucking Larry King cameo during this montage. First of all, great use of the Ghostbusters theme. Ghostbusters theme is a fucking bop. It's awesome. Legend has it that was kind of stolen from somebody, but so what? Who cares? Doesn't matter. It's fucking great in this movie. Again, I mentioned the Larry King cameo, but this kind of started. Well, it didn't start, but this is very 80s montage. Like this scene right here is super stereotypical 80s montage scene, but I think it's really good. I like the newspaper clippings. The one has Princess Diana pregnant again, or whatever it says on top, or expecting again, which dates it all to hell, but it's really it makes me giggle. The scene, all the real crowds that you mentioned, Brian, they talked about that, but I know we're probably going to get into it towards the end about Ghostbusters and Ghost Breakers, but they didn't really want to shoot that scene with Ghost Breakers as the chant, and they called Columbia right there, and they're like, hey, we really don't want to shoot this with, we have a live crowd here, and they just kind of stuck with Ghostbusters. They had to fight for the rights. I know we're going to get into that. But I mentioned the ghost blowjob. Listen, this ghost blowjob doesn't have anything on Scary Movie's ghost sex scene, so can't be too bad. I mean, we already had the ghost fucking, what's her name? Oh, Tori Spelling up a wall. So, again, here we are. Can't be too bad. There's nothing wrong with Dan Aykroyd getting a little slobby knobby corn on the cobby in a Ghostbusters film. It happens. And listen. It's so funny to me that this scene is in there. It's really out of place, to be honest, with the rest of the movie. Because I know there's some adult humor, but when you really think about Ghostbusters, it's very nostalgic for a lot of 80s kids. And this scene is still in here. It's still it makes me laugh every time. I think it's great. I think the cross-eyed that Dan Aykroyd gets sells the shit out of it. Like he's really, really getting some. I think it's great. I love this set of scenes. I think it's phenomenal. Best part of the movie.
Yeah, again, I want to reiterate, this movie is rated PG, and this episode of Don't Go Out There is rated NC-17. So,
so we're just supposed to ignore. We're just supposed to ignore ghost blowjobs. Okay, fair enough.
Oh, jeez. Anyway, but I love the effects. I love the set of scene as well. I love the effects that we get on Slimer, getting to see, the ghost, the first visual that we're getting to see of him. And, Slimer is synonymous with this film. When you think of Ghostbusters, you think of Stay Puft and Slimer. And it's crazy how little Slimer's actually on screen in this. And then you mentioned, Brian, that he didn't actually get his name Slimer until the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, in 1986. But the crew actually, the name of it was Onion Head. And because Slimer apparently had a horrendous smell, and there was a scene that showed Slimer haunting two newlyweds that showed how bad he smelled, but they cut that out of the film. And so I think that they made the right call by not calling Slimer Onion Head, because that would not have stuck as well. Right. I love the when they almost assassinate the maid, and Spengler and Raymond are apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, and Venkman's just like, we thought you were someone else. His delivery is like so unapologetic. It's almost like he's putting the blame on the maid for being in the wrong place. Just his tone. We thought you were someone else. And then, you guys touched on it, the don't cross streams. When you're watching this film, you got to think that when he says that, wait, forgot to mention, you don't want to cross streams. You got to figure that's got to come into play later, and it does in a big way. And so it's good that I like that they set it up here instead of waiting and put it in back to back. At the climax of the movie. The scene where they're catching Slimer does produce one of my favorite lines. It's really an unsung line in the film. When they're knocking the tables out of the way and clearing the space, and Venkman goes, "Wait, I've always wanted to try this," and he pulls the tablecloth, and everything falls, but he goes, "And the flowers are still standing." Like, I love that, because we've all done that. We've all fucked something up and been like, we'll take the smallest victory and be proud of it. That was hilarious to me. And speaking of something that we've all been there on, like I said earlier, Winston is just such a relatable character. He's a down-to-earth guy. He doesn't really believe in this kind of shit. He's not here for any other reason but a paycheck. We've all taken jobs, or I'm assuming that we've all had jobs that we didn't necessarily love. We were just in it because we needed to pay the bills. And in that regard, Winston, if I were to relate myself to any character in this movie, it's Winston and Venkman, because I've got two things on my mind. And I'll leave it at that. But yeah, another good set of scenes. I really like. Sorry, I really like Janine in this film. I think that the way that she plays. The way that Annie Potts plays Janine in this film is, I love it. She's I don't know, it's hard to explain her attitude and her behavior, her demeanor as a character is just fantastic, and delivery and portrayal of it was great. Another great set of scenes. You won't hear me really critique too much in this episode, spoiler. So go ahead, Nico.
Ray shows Winston where they store the ghosts and how to, store them. A man from the EPA is there, and Peter insults Janine's work capabilities. Walter Peck shakes Peter's slimy hand and asks what he's a doctor of, and now asks how many ghosts they've caught and where they are stored at. He tells him he can't see the storage facility until he uses the magic word. Walter wants to investigate any possible environmental damages. Egon tells Ray and Walter about the psychokinetic energy. He fears something big is on the way. Peter tells about the EPA visit, and he's informed about the grid not holding up. Now we see this dog-like statue come to life. The paws break and the eyes break, revealing red eyes. Dana walks past Lewis's door and is stopped. She tells him she has a date, and he's devastated. He says you can bring him along. She gets in her apartment and gets a call from her mom. She says everything seems okay since the last encounter, and she has a date with a Ghostbuster, the guys from TV. We see the room to the side of her light up, and the door has an imprint in it, like the Zool face imprint. Hands and arms emerge from the chair she's in and grab her, and the chair slides to the door, and we see Zool in the room, and the door closes behind her. At Lewis's party, he brags on his financial savvy with his medicine and his smoked salmon deals. He gets a ring at the doorbell and gets the two guests' coats and throws them in a room on top of one of the demon dog creatures. He closes the door and he hears the roars, and the guests start to panic. It jumps out the room and chases Lewis. He runs out into the street screaming for help. He says a bear is in his room and he's going to bring it up at the next tenants meeting. He gets to a fancy restaurant and he can't get inside. He's backed up against a window and it roars at him and it possesses him. We see him sliding to the ground. Peter arrives to the building and sees the ruckus. He gets to Dana's room and she looks different. She asks if he's the keymaster and slams the door in his face when he says no. He knocks again and says he's the keymaster. She says her name is Zool and she's the gatekeeper. Zool says we must prepare for the coming of Gozer, the destructor. Dana lays in bed and Peter asks if we're still going out. And I did like this line. He says, you can pick up if you know someone's coming over. Peter says it's a rule not to get with possessed people. She says, I want you inside me. And he laughs and says, I think there's already someone in there. Zool says there is no Dana, only Zool. A creepy voice now says there's no Dana. He says you must have a lovely singing voice, and we see Dana roaring and begin to levitate. We see Lewis now sniffing, looking for the gatekeeper. He tells a buggy horse his name is Vince Clortho, keymaster of Gozer. He's asked if he wants a ride, but he snarls at the guy with red eyes and runs away. All right, Brian, go ahead, brother.
William Atherton as Walter Peck, to me, he's like the unsung brilliant part of this movie. I mean, he plays this role so incredibly well. Harold Ramis actually wanted Peck to be, an understandable villain, an extreme New Yorker, and Atherton's look, his delivery of that is just so perfect, especially in this scene. This back and forth with Peter and what's the magic word, Dr. Venkman? Like you probably know him from Die Hard, but Atherton, he stated just recently that he still gets all the time people on the streets asking him if he has no dick, which I mean that comes later in the mayor's office, but and these scenes actually with Dana and Lewis and the terror dogs actually used to kind of scare me some as a kid, honestly. And you can actually see one of the claws, bust up through the chair. Absolutely, and this has been a joke through the years, but one of the claws absolutely cops a feel on Sigourney Weaver, like without a question, you can see it. But I mean, hell, even that, I mean, you can see how that shit would scare a little kid, I think. Rick Moranis, actually completely made up that entire speech he gave about the tax assets of Ted and Annette Fleming, and as they were walking in, and that whole thing is just like, if you notice, it's just one shot with no cuts at all until he opens the door for that dog and the laundry joke, and I think Moranis definitely showed his big acting dick right there in that group of scenes. Okay, so the dogs, whenever they're in motion, to me, that's definitely the only thing that I think truly doesn't hold up effects wise in this movie. The whole stop motion effects. I mean, I remember even in the early '90s watching RoboCop, which young kids should definitely not be watching, but in remembering like how bad those stop motion effects were then, and that was definitely like an early '90s trope. So that's definitely a nitpick on this film I can get behind for sure. And the size difference between the stop motion and the practical dogs always has bothered me a little bit, as the practical is like much larger. But I mean, we're talking about very little screen time for these dogs versus the effects in this film, which, like I said, 30 years to me, 99% of the effects to me hold up. There's a whole scene cut here where Aykroyd and Murray actually play two bums in the park as Moranis ran through there, and I've seen it. It was definitely a good thing it was cut. It was way too Saturday Night Live-ish, and it takes you out of it. Which honestly, like right here is where you actually probably get some pretty good tension-filled parts with. I know we're talking about a horror comedy that's mostly comedy, 95% comedy probably, but this part actually does give you a little bit of horror tension and without comedy filled parts. And I'm glad they cut that scene so it didn't take you out of there. And lastly, again, Moranis does such a good job, I think, especially sliding down that window at the Tavern on the Green. And again, just Murray and Weaver in her apartment with the whole gatekeeper keymaster back and forth. I want you inside me. Like you said, it sounds like you've got at least two people in there already. God, it's just so good. And actually, lastly, Ivan Reitman's voice, it was actually Ivan Reitman's voice during that whole like, this is no Dana, only Zool part. So just a little tidbit. There you go, Mike.
– This scene has always bugged the shit out of me, but only because if I was laying in bed with Sigourney Weaver, she hit me with, there is no Dana, there is only Zool, I'm running the fuck the other way. I don't care what kind of doctor I am, what kind of scientist I am. I ain't trying to figure that shit out. I'm out of there. But anyway, and I meant to mention it in the last set of scenes, but I love the character of Winston. I think he plays his part really well. I know we already touched on it, but I just wanted to come out and say I wish he had a bigger role. I know he does in the sequel, but I wish it was just a little bit more of this character with a bigger, like the way he plays it here in this movie. I wish it was a little bit of a bigger role. But anyways, look, Rick Moranis fucking tickles the shit out of me in this movie. I said it off the top. I said it very early on, and this is the scenes I was basically referring to. He's great at this party. And I know you mentioned being ad lib. It's fantastic. He's so funny. I know I always unintentionally because I just don't think there's any way he meant to be that funny. Just being nervous and awkward and nerdy and he's the worst dancer I've ever fucking seen, including me. And I posted myself dancing on Twitter earlier, so I know what bad dancing is like. So it is. I just love Rick Moranis here, and I love this scene with the oh god, the keymaster, gatekeeper, whatever the fuck. She asked him, and he says no, and slams the door in his face, gets a big laugh out of me every time because it takes him a minute to go. Oh, I probably should have said yes if I wanted to come inside and have a little boom boom time, and he does, and shit goes off the rails from there, pal. I can't think of a much worse female experience than what Bill Murray experienced right there. Unless you're on an episode of Cheaters or something. I mean, it's a tough day when Zool comes at your ass. I think this is a good set of scenes. Rick Moranis is the star of the show. Him running away from those demon dogs that he called a bear. There's a bear. That shit's fucking great. The scene in the window is good. It reminds me a lot. I can't think of the movie off the top of my head, but it reminds me a lot of movies I've seen where you have all the tension and like kind of crazy shit happening outside, and inside it's like its own little fucking world. It's its own bubble. Titanic does it a lot. Like there's just a lot of like this is happening. Oh, but this other thing over here is happening. I think you kind of mentioned there's some tension. That scene kind of has it a little bit for me where it's played for laughs, but it's actually shot really well. We're inside this nice fancy thing where everyone's drinking their fucking champagne and eating caviar, and outside Rick Moranis is getting attacked by this fucking demon dog bear pig thing. So again, just this is not my favorite set of scenes. I do think there's some of this that kind of takes me out of us a little bit, only because A, the effects, B, the demon dog a little hokey for me, but I don't have this these aren't the set of scenes I remember that well. But what I do remember is Rick Moranis being a fucking G right here. To me, this is the funniest thing he's been in. Like this is the funniest character he's ever played. I think it's great. It just tickles me. So really good set of scenes. It's Sigourney Weaver is a badass right here, playing Zool and Dana at the same time. Really, really good stuff. So a good set of scenes, just not my favorite. A little bit of a come down for me over the last set of scenes.
Yeah, first of all, you need to put some respect on Danny O'Shea, Rick Moranis' character in The Little Giants. But second of all, I said funniest, not best. Not best. That's fair.
I also shrunk a bunch of.
I disagree with you, though. This is actually my favorite set of scenes in the film, and it's because Rick Moranis. I think Rick Moranis, and like we said earlier, John Candy was considered for the role of Louis Tully, and this set of scenes is the reason why I'm glad that he didn't take that role. Right. Because John Candy is one of the funniest people ever, but he would have taken over and just been too John Candy, if that makes any sense.
He's got a particular shtick that he has.
Yeah. And so I think the sweet little nerdy Louis Tully, it just worked when he's genuinely. You could tell he has no social skills at all. He's got people over at his house. He's having this party, but he has no fucking clue how to blend in. He just wants to talk a million miles a minute to every guest that walks in the door. It's fucking hilarious. I do love the fact that he was the key master, and he's trying to find the gatekeeper, and they were just a couple doors down. I like that. That's just the way that they wrote that in the film. Good thing that Dana didn't go to that party. I agree with you, Brian. The dog's effect that's the worst effects in the film. I wrote, except maybe the taxi driver later. When all the ghosts are freed.
I like the taxi driver.
Well, he's like the crypt keeper. Yeah, it did look like the crypt keeper, but his movement, looked like a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic. Like it was just so robotic in the way he turned his head and everything. And so that's the only thing that I didn't like. I liked his look, just not his movements. Peter's interaction with Dana at the apartment was fucking hilarious, like you guys said. Sounds like you got at least 2 people in there already. That was hilarious, and kudos to my man Vinkman, knowing when it's not appropriate to go all the way with a lady. No matter how bad she's asking for it, shows good restraint there. Take it away, Nico.
Police knock at the Ghostbusters door and they're dropping off Lewis at their place. Egon checks him with the PKE meter and says bring him in. Janine says he's so kind to take care of him. Egon sees a dog creature on the monitor and asks what his name was again. Vin's Clortho. Egon asks what was the sign. Gozer the Traveler, who will come in a pre-chosen form. Janine says he's very strange. She's afraid he'll die and embraces him. Peter calls Egon and Peter tells him Gozer has put the moves on Dana. Dana says she's the gatekeeper and Egon says he has the keymaster. Egon says it would be dangerous to put them together. Peter kisses Dana's hand and says he's got to go to work and asks if she'll stay in bed until he gets back. Now we see Ray and Winston in the car. Ray tells Winston about Dana's apartment building and it's strange. Winston says maybe they've been busy because the dead have been rising from the grave. Cops and Walter arrive at Ghostbusters headquarters with a warrant. Egon says turning the machines off would be very dangerous. Peter tells Walter they're not responsible for what happens, and the electrician shuts the machine off per Walter's command. The red light flashes and alarm sounds off. The blocks in the wall fly out and we see light. Explosion inside the building and an eruption from the roof. Lewis says this is the sign, and then Lewis gets away. They go to catch the keymaster, but Walter has them arrested. We see the lights flying into the sky, and Dana wakes up. We see ghosts all over the city emerge from the subway, sewers, and driving taxi cabs. Lewis follows the signs in the sky. Dana's walls explode. In the jail cell, Egon and Ray look over the blueprints. Ray tells Peter the building is a huge superconductive antenna that was designed and built expressly for the purpose of pulling in and concentrating spiritual turbulence. Dana has a room right in the corner of that building. Egon says something evil is about to happen, and the building is the door. Egon now gives the backstory of Ivo Shandor and his secret society. They're Gozer worshippers. Egon says he had almost 1,000 followers, and they had rituals on the roof of the building. Peter starts to sing, and Winston asks if they're going to actually go in front of a judge with this. The mayor asks to see the Ghostbusters. Lewis makes it to Dana's apartment, and they announce their titles to each other. Dana kisses him passionately, and then they walk towards the stairs. And the next 2 scenes are the ending. Go ahead, Brian.
Dropping off or picking up. I love that line there by Annie Potts when Lewis is getting dropped off there. And that prop on his head's actually stated by Ramis was literally just a colander with some wires sticking out. And you can definitely tell. This is a scene I was talking about earlier though with Ecto 1 driving over the Brooklyn Bridge. A funny little tidbit, like this was actually the very last scene that they shot in the film. And by then that Cadillac they were using for the Ecto was already breaking down and having to be repaired. And it's not like they had more than one car back then. And so this scene, the car actually broke down for good just as they wrapped. But it had to be towed off the Brooklyn Bridge and everything. But this scene, and I'm so glad Winston got to be a part of this because you have this very serious, very well done scene between Hudson and Aykroyd, and just some great line delivery about the dead rising from the grave and in the Bible and quoting Revelations. To me, it's just so damn good. And like such a beautiful shot with the sun coming up in the horizon with the Twin Towers and the Ecto driving over the bridge. I thought it was gorgeous. Another funny little note is that as the firehouse is exploding on the right, you can actually see Ron Jeremy, the porn star, as an extra when the Ecto 1 pulls up the police barricade. And the idea for the light behind the bricks, as Nico was talking about, showing up, missing from the pressure building up behind them and lighting up. But that effect, Reitman said he actually got the idea from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Also, I love the jail scene. Like another little tidbit, the jail scene was filmed in a prison that was actually reported to be haunted. And the dailies had some scratches all over them with no apparent physical cause. And Reitman was concerned about returning there. So the crew was pretty relieved to find out that the footage was complete with us having to, the footage was fine and good and deal and complete, and they didn't have to go film it again. But also, I don't know if you noticed, but you get a Reginald Vell Johnson jail guard Carl Winslow character cameo here. With all of his cop roles, you actually can put this, you can put Die Hard, you can put Family Matters, all of those in the same little universe. And my man Carl Weathers, or Carl Weathers, that was freaking Apollo Creed. Carl Winslow had an amazing career as a cop. I'll just say that. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so you mentioned some of the positives in this set of scene, and the first time I watched this and took notes, I had a little more negativity about the set of scenes, and I watched it 3 times, getting ready for this show, and some of the positives you mentioned, I do like. There is some beautiful camera work there, shot with the Twin Towers, sun coming up. I think the scene with the priest is pretty good and stuff. But this is kind of the set of scenes that kind of pulls me out of the movie a little bit. And I don't know if it's just because we've been hit with so much stuff, so much ghost busting, for lack of a better term. I think there's just a lot more that had been happening in the previous scenes, where this set of scenes kind of loses me a little bit. Outside of the jail scene, I think it's pretty good. But I didn't take a lot of notes here because the movie, every time I've watched it, kind of loses me a little bit during this set of scenes. Even down to the Gozer and Gatekeeper and all that stuff, it gets a little bit science fiction-y for me, and I know that's kind of the point of the movie. I get that, but it's not my cup of tea, so it's kind of hard for me to follow. It's kind of hard for me to pay attention because I'm a dumbass. So I'm not blaming the filmmakers or the scriptwriter there. I'm blaming myself for being a dumbass and not being able to follow along in some of the more science fiction-y ghost terms or whatever. So this set of scenes kind of drags me a little bit. I don't necessarily think they're bad. They don't mess up the movie or anything. I'm just kind of ready to get to the big shindig, the big finale. So I had a hard time taking notes on it because, quite frankly, I just didn't think there was a lot to take notes on. But I do like the jail cell scene. I think that's got some good stuff, and I'm glad the character Winston gets to shine a little bit because, again, I just love the way he plays it straight. He's basically a hired gun, and I like that about him. So outside of that, not a whole lot more on this set of scenes.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, Mike. Like, I don't have a lot of notes here either. Brian pretty much touched on everything that I had. So if there were a set of scenes that I had to pick and say they're my least favorite, or if there were a set of scenes that kind of drag a little bit, it is these to me. But the dialogue makes it still enjoyable and watchable. It's consistent with the rest of the film. This is a well-written script, and as far as dialogue goes, so it keeps you into it. It's just I didn't write a lot of notes. The only thing I wrote was 2 things that hasn't already been touched on. Number one goes, this guy, 1,000 followers ain't shit. This guy's supposed to be a god, and I'm just a normal guy, and I've got 1,100 on Twitter. Second of all, I wrote the same thing. I wrote the same thing as you, Brian, as far as Reginald Vell Johnson. I wrote that, in my mind, I put this together like he was this security guard at the jail, but then he moved to Chicago and became a cop and become a family man. And so, yeah, it's all one big universe in my mind as well as far as Family Matters, this, and and that, of course his sacrifice at in Die Hard. But yeah, just overall not my favorite set of scenes, but no nitpicks other than the fact that, like you said, Mike, I'm ready for the conclusion. I'm ready for the shit to hit the fan.
All right, here's the ending. The police escort the Ghostbusters to the mayor's office. The mayor asks for this guy Peck. He tells the mayor they use gases for people to see ghosts. Ray says everything worked fine until they shut off the grid. Peter confirms Walter has no dick. The Archbishop enters and says he thinks it's a sign from God. Winston tells him that these things are real. Peter and Ray say Old Testament type disasters. Fire, brimstone, volcanoes, darkness. Peter says if they're wrong, we just go to jail. He then uses the election and voters to his argument. Peter says he's going to get Walter a fruit basket. Police escort the Ghostbusters towards Dana's apartment building where black clouds are forming at its roof. Peter has become quite the celebrity. He calls Ray the heart of the Ghostbusters. We hear rumbling noises and lightning strikes at the roof. The building collapses some and the road they're standing on caves in. The Ghostbusters emerge from the sunk-in road triumphantly to a roaring crowd. The four enter the building ready to battle. They climb the stairs and are growing tired. Zool and Vince arise to more lightning. The guys make it to floor 22. They enter Dana's apartment and Ray asks about the stairs. Electricity flows through Zool and Vince. The two become their demonic dog form now. The two dogs go to the stairs and are guards now for Gozer. Peter volunteers Ray to go get Gozer. Ray approaches and tells Gozer to cease. Are you a god? Gozer asks. He says no, and she zaps him with electricity, saying die. The crowd looks on in fear. Winston says always say you're a god if you're asked. This chick is toast, Peter says. They get the proton packs out and shoot at Gozer, but she jumps over it. Egon says go full stream and aim for the flat top, but they miss again. Building collapses more and Gozer says the traveler has come and to choose and perish. Choose the form of the destructor. Peter says empty your heads and Gozer says the choice was made. Ray is guilty. He instantly thought of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Traffic crashes as they try and escape. Stay Puft Godzilla's through town, and Ray says we have to roast it. Egon says he's terrified beyond rational thought. They zap the Marshmallow Man, but he sends the flames right back at them. Peter says just get him laid and it'll be okay. The Marshmallow Man climbs the building. Egon says we could cross the streams. He says there's a very slim chance they could survive. The four shoot at the temple, crossing their streams, blowing up the temple, and causing a giant explosion. Marshmallow fluff covers the city and the three Ghostbusters except Peter. They walk to the statues and say it smells like barbecued dog hair. We see a hand emerge from the statue, and they break the statue off the body, and it's Dana. Lewis cries for help. He still has the head covering on. Dana asks where she is, and Lewis says the superintendent is going to be pissed. Lewis asks who does their taxes, and Egon wants a sample of his brain tissue. They walk out victoriously as Winston says he loves this town. Peter and Dana kiss. The end credits roll with the Ghostbusters theme as we see them exiting the building. The city rejoices as they begin to drive off, and the film ends with the Slimer flying towards the screen. All right, Brian, what do you think of the ending?
Man, how great is this mayor scene? I mean, come on, David Margulies, rest in peace. He's so good as a mayor, and he returns actually in Ghostbusters 2 as well. But there's just so many great one-liners in that piece. I love it. The scene with the street ripping up, I think it's just so good, and like all of that was recreated back on the soundstage with those pieces of the street, on hydraulics. I think that was freaking well done. Great effects there. Also, Gozer, Paul Rubens, yes, Pee Wee freaking Herman was originally going to play Gozer. I don't even know what to say to that. But I'm glad it didn't happen. Look, it's and to me, like I think Mike's going to go the opposite way with this, but to me, like I it's hard for me to gloss over the ending. I think it's absolutely tremendous. Even the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, who I mean, like just as an example, like Yoda fighting in Star Wars. I mean, you have the whole possibility in that thin line of being like way cheesy and it taking you out of it. But to me, like it's played with such seriousness here. I mean, I know there's some jokes, but in the context of everything, I think it's tremendous and it works out well. The producers actually had an alternate ending ready in case test audience didn't like it. And Reitman is and was big on test audiences. He used to actually like have a screening for his movies, and he did a lot of those National Lampoon's movies back in the day. But yeah, he would actually write down how many times the audience laughed, and if it wasn't enough, he'd go back to the drawing board and add more laughs. So he did take that seriously, and he made a comment that he wanted to kind of make this movie as almost a love letter to New York movies. And, to me, I think it's great, and Winston saying, I love this town at the end kind of caps and, brings all of that New Yorker feel, brings all of it together, and I love the ending.
Oh yeah, so there are some things I like about this set of scenes. You mentioned the mayor scene. I think the quips back and forth are really fucking funny about having no dick, dickless, and all that stuff. He calls him Mr. Pecker or whatever. It's there's some really good stuff there. And again, it's not that I don't like the actual ending. I think the the humor in there is really well done. When Dan Aykroyd had his facial expression when he realized, oh shit, I thought of it, and everyone else when they start to look in and they realize that he's the reason that the final form was thought of, I think is really good. I think all of that is great. The dialogue is the strength of this movie. Even here at the end with the jokes, I think it's really good. When somebody asks if you're a god, say yes. I think all that's really good. Just really, really good heavy dialogue. But, and I know you kind of touched on it, just for me personally, this is a little hokey, even for me, and it does play it itself seriously. But it just for me personally, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, it's funny, especially when he's smiling and walking and trying to destroy the city. It's funny, but it's almost so over the top for me. I can't invest. It's not that it's not funny, but in the sense of the movie, which I do agree with you, Brian, to this point, even though there's been jokes, it's taken itself just seriously enough to not be a parody, which we've talked about a ton this month because where's the line, between the Wayans brothers and something like this? And I think that this is the only scene for me really that kind of really tiptoes that line a little bit. But again, it's a minor nitpick. It's not bad. It's funny when he burns to death and the whole city is covered with marshmallow fluff, which is a terrible invention, by the way. I'm sorry if you like it with your peanut butter. It fucking sucks. Anyway, but no, yeah. I think, but outside of that, it's a good ending. I like Winston at the end saying, "I love this town," like iconic to me. I do it in a lot of towns I go to. I say, "I love this town." So half the time I forget I'm quoting that movie. I know that's where I got it from. And so I think, again, Bill Murray getting the girl after all that, I think is good. Rick Moranis is fucking great here, and he's like, "Someone turn on the lights." It's so, or whatever. He's great. So there's some good, but I just think Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, as iconic as he is, and I get it, I understand it. But watching it now, it doesn't pull me in like it did when I was 7, 8, or whatever. The first a few times I saw it. But again, not a bad ending. I just wish it had really stayed the line and taken itself a little more seriously. But again, not too bad. And again, very good dialogue here towards the end by all involved.
Yeah, so Nico's reading his notes there on the last scenes. I've got to give the quote. I mean, this is when he confirmed that he is dickless. This is just such a good quote. So everything was fine to our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here. He's like, they caused an explosion. The mayor says, "Is this true?" "Yes, it's true. This man has no dick." Like just the delivery there and the way that he said it. It's just, that's such a good line. And then again, this set of scenes, the ending here has some of the best lines of the movie. When he's like, "Ray, if someone asks if you're a god, you say yes." Like that, coming from someone who gets asked all the time if I'm a god, yeah, you absolutely say yes.
Oh golly.
I think we get some great effects here, some great shots of Stay Puft walking downtown. I mean, that's some of the most. We talk about those shots, right? The Jason Voorhees in downtown Manhattan, or Jason Voorhees on the top of the burning RV if you don't like Manhattan. Just some of those shots from movies that is just one image that sticks with you and is iconic. And when you think of the movie, that's what you think of. That's one of those shots when Stay Puft's walking downtown. And I think it is funny how his explanation. He'll try to think of the least threatening thing possible, something from my childhood that would never kill me. I thought that was hilarious. And I also like Egon's answer. And he's like, "There's absolutely a small chance we survive." Like, is there absolutely a chance, or is it a small chance? Like the way he said that, I thought that was great. And then I do love that as soon as Lewis, becomes Lewis again, he's right back to being the nerdy accountant, right? He's like, who does your guys' taxes? Like, I love Lewis Tully. And this is just a great conclusion to the film. It didn't leave anything, to the imagination. It didn't leave anything. It didn't fall short of your expectations, your hopes for what we were building towards. I think it was absolutely great, and the way that it was shot, the amount of energy that it took, literally energy, to provide the lighting for the final scene on the stage that they shot it in was just the commitment that the studio made to shut down all the lights all across the studio just so they have enough power to supply it. It really paid off. I think that this is one of the better endings to a movie that you'll find, especially one that was made so long ago.
Y'all got any more final thoughts before we move on real quick? Okay. I just want to touch on one thing, not from the last two scenes, but the two before that. I'm kind of with Mike and Dustin about this part of this. I like the jail cell scene, but I kind of felt like the whole explaining the backstory of Gozer was misplaced there, because Peter explains to Dana, like, at the fountain, like, kind of the stuff that's been going on about her case, but they wait until they're in jail to, like, explain about the building. Did I miss anything? Like, did they know that before that, or they just find it out? But I thought that was kind of misplaced, and I thought it was kind of late backstory, honestly. But I like the jail cell scene, but I thought that was kind of misplaced. And that might be the part that just took me out of it a little bit. But we just got a couple fan questions. The first one is from Michelle, one of our super fans. Super excited for this episode. She must be a big Ghostbusters fan, Brian. I grew up in the 80s, so this movie has a lot of memories for me. What do you guys think of the special effects for that time? Hit and miss. I mean, some age poorly, but some still look good to me. I think the proton shooting, I think, looks fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, the only thing that really looks bad to me is just those dogs jumping around. That looked terrible.
Yeah,
But,
the stop motion effects is what looked bad, which was the dogs. Yeah, that to me stands out.
But the Slimer, the other ghosts, they look fine to me. They don't look bad. Just the dogs look bad. Sean Irwin asked a question I think was gonna be fun to answer. Favorite ghost from everyone if you don't talk about it during the show. What's everyone's favorite ghost?
Slimer.
Yeah, it's got to be Slimer and not so much necessarily from this movie, but from the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon. I remember it watching it as a kid. I love Slimer, and so it's Slimer.
Well, from this one, I guess I would say Slimer, but my favorite one of the two was Vigo the Carpathian, was the Viking bad guy in the next one. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm just going on this one. I picked the Dream Ghost because if you can make someone's eyes cross like that, I appreciate your work.
Wait, we spoke about that ghost like he was Van Gogh. She was Van Gogh.
But anywho, let's move on.
Nico might have just provided our first ever host requesting that a ghost call him sometime. So that's interesting. That's a moment.
All right. And then we got a fun question from a friend of the show, Charles Reed. He's from the 5 at the Back podcast. If you're a soccer fan, check that out. He asked, if the Stay Puft Man was 100 feet tall, what size Hershey bar is needed to make the perfect ratio s'mores once he gets torched?
Well, I'll go first.
That's a big Hershey bar.
Hot take. You should not make s'mores. You should throw marshmallow in the trash. That's the correct answer.
I don't like marshmallow unless it's on a s'more. But I'm going to need a pretty big-ass Hershey bar to eat that marshmallow because I don't like marshmallow that much. But on a s'more, good little combo there. So, I don't know. Fuck it. 200 feet? Let's go fucking double the size of this marshmallow. This sorry, soft fuck. Anyway.
Y'all got any more comments on that before we jump into fun facts?
No.
I only have 2 of them. I know Brian and Dustin said they have quite a few. Go ahead, Mike.
Since you guys all have a ton, just let me go first on this because I didn't write any down. I kind of had my 2 during the show. So this movie had a budget unspecified, 25 to 30 million, depending on where you look, depending on who you talk to, but made
$295.2 million. So pretty successful movie. Obviously spawned a sequel that a lot of people really like. And this movie, to me, just crossed over into pop culture lexicon so much. Everyone knows who you're going to call. Everyone knows the theme. A lot of people can quote the lines. They know,
the costume.
Right, the costume is very so. This is one of the few movies, and we've done, Halloween 70, but like this is the first movie that's not a horror that we've kind of covered that really is in the pop culture consciousness. It is more so than any horror movie we covered, in my opinion, where when you say Ghostbusters, you know what it means, and it clearly shows up in the dollar signs. $295.2 million back then is a lot of fucking money.
Oh yeah, in '84, that's a ton of money.
Yeah.
I only have two of them, so I'll just knock these two out. Then I'll let y'all take over. Sigourney Weaver. I had a few more, but y'all already said them. Sigourney Weaver recalled, "I once had a fire in my apartment after the movie, and the fireman came to put it out. One of them opened my refrigerator and said, 'Whoa, you better call the Ghostbusters.'" The character of Winston was meant to have joined the team much earlier and would have been slimed at the hotel. When Eddie Murphy declined the role, the script was rewritten to have Winston appear about halfway through the film. And I had another one where Winston was or Ernie was he's kind of got like a love frustration with his role because he kind of thought he was going to get more, but they kind of shrunk his role down. But y'all already touched on that. But I mean, he provided good chemistry. I think. I don't think he was there just to be there.
I actually said all of mine during it. So the only one that I've got here that I just wanted to say is that, this movie or this podcast episode is coming out tomorrow, which is February 24th. And February 24th tomorrow is the 7th anniversary of Harold Ramis dying. So just rest in peace, Harold Ramis. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that at the end if no one else said it, but absolutely, rest in peace, man. You were great.
Yeah, I've still got quite a few, so bear with me. I'm going to read through them here. When the guys agreed to cross the streams and defeat Gozer, Winston says, "This job is definitely not worth $11,500 a year. And if you adjust that for inflation, the yearly salary for a Ghostbuster in 2018 would be about $27,437.60. So grossly underpaid still. The $4,800 that Raymond Stantz paid for the Ghostbusters car comes out to $11,809.49 in 2019 dollars. Then I've got a list of some people that were considered or auditioned for various roles. Julia Roberts auditioned for the role of Dana. Patricia Heaton was actually an extra in the opening scene of the library. You may know Patricia Heaton as Deborah from Everybody Loves Raymond. Tom Hanks and Robin Williams were both considered for the role of Peter Venkman. Tom Hanks I couldn't see. Robin Williams would have been great. Of course, he was great in everything. Rest in peace also. Steve Guttenberg he turned down the role of Peter Venkman to star in the Police Academy. I like Steve Guttenberg. I don't know that would have worked as well. But just because Bill Murray knocked it out of the park so much. Christopher Walken, John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd, and Jeff Goldblum were all considered for the role of Dr. Egon Spengler. Chevy Chase actually turned down the role of Venkman because he said the script in the movie wasn't the original script that he read, and the original script was much darker and scarier, and he didn't want to be a part of that. And so that would have been interesting to see, like that might have taken it from a comedy sci-fi movie to an actual horror movie, that would be interesting to see. What that product would have looked like. Last of the actor auditions, Michael Keaton actually turned down the role. He turned down both roles of Venkman and Spengler. So it would have been weird to see Batman in this.
Christopher Walken would have been interesting.
Yeah, definitely. This movie was released the same day as Gremlins in 1984. It's included among the American Film Institute's 2000 list of top 100 funniest American movies. In a 2016 interview, Paul Feig said that according to Dan Aykroyd and Ivan Reitman, the white ghost in the iconic Ghostbusters logo is called Moogly. So there you go. You got a name there. And fun fact, another spin-off of the logo. So the creator of Casper the Friendly Ghost actually tried to sue the film because he said that Moogly looked too similar to one of Casper's uncles. Can't remember which one.
The fat one, I think.
I think it was the fat one. I don't remember his name though. But the lawsuit was
Fatso.
thrown. Fatso, yeah, that makes sense. But the lawsuit was thrown out because the judge ruled that there's only so many ways you can draw a ghost. Two more here. The movie's line, well, there's something you don't see every day, was voted as the number 19 of the 100 greatest movie lines by Premiere magazine in 2007. And if you adjust it for inflation, this is Columbia Pictures' highest grossing film of all time.
Yeah, 295 million in 84 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money now, but that's a lot of money. I mean, that's Dustin Franklin money back then. Y'all ready to jump into our not least favorite kill and favorite kill? Because I don't think there were any. Y'all ready to jump into the rating?
Yeah, just the rating.
Which one of you tens want to go first?
You want to go at the same time?
It don't matter. I'll go and knock it out because I don't really have a whole lot else to say besides, like I said, that this is just.
I'm just terrified to go, to be honest.
Yeah, so this one's an easy one for me. Again, like I said, I think it's the perfect blend of horror and comedy. And there's a reason why this is my, favorite movie of all time. And absolutely got to give this one a 10 for sure.
Yeah. So if you've joined me on this journey of 70 movie reviews now. Well, I haven't been a part of all of them, so that's misleading. But it's no secret that I've been a tough critic in the past. I said it last week, though, that this is going to be my highest rated episode ever. This, ladies and gentlemen, is my first ever 10.
Let's go.
All right, I'll go next. All right, I think Bill Murray just has a charm about him, and just about every role I've seen him in. I think he and the three other Ghostbusters have a great chemistry, and I love Sigourney Weaver, obviously. But I have to be honest, I've watched this movie 3 times in the past, 6 to 8 months, and after every watch, I just feel indifferent about it. It's just not, my personal favorite. I wrote about the effects, but it's not a deal breaker. I can understand someone seeing this at a young age or during its release and loving it. I respect the cast of this movie, but it's just not like Brian's already said, like he quotes this movie a lot. For me, that's something like Talladega Nights or Joe Dirt. I quote those comedies more, or Step Brothers. But I didn't hate the movie, but I definitely don't love it. I gave it a 6. And I'm probably going to edit it out of the ending.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the middle of the three of you here. I think there's a lot of good, the comedy, the dialogue, I touched on it. I think the cast is great. They picked the perfect cast. Every character is played exactly how I would imagine that character to be played. I think the effects are okay. It knocks it down a little bit. There's some scenes that drag. And again, this isn't a movie that I like to rewatch a ton. And I think it's because maybe I grew up with it a little too much or something. And it just is something I have to if I watch it once, I'm good. It doesn't feel like it's but it takes a lot to get me to actually turn it on and watch it. When I do, I remember how much I like it. So there's some give and take with it there. Again, Bill Murray, Rick Moranis, all guys that make me laugh. Really good cast, really good stuff. I gave it a 7.5. I think that I wanted to go 8, and just there's the ending really pulls it down for me a little bit, and I hate to be a negative Nancy on that, but it's just how I feel. And the set of scenes before the ending kind of pulls it down for me as well. But there's so much good in the first hour and 20 minutes of this movie that it's really hard to go any lower than that. So I gave it a 7.5, partially because there's just not. If I had some nostalgia for it, I probably would have given it an 8, an 8.5. But even though I watched it growing up, I still don't have that same kind of nostalgia for it that others do. But good, still a good movie, still one I hold on high. I feel like 7.5 is low because we have 2 fucking 10s on this episode. But at least I rated it higher than Nico. I felt like he thought he had a brother in arms here tonight. I'm sorry I let you down, man.
No, it's okay.
That gives us a.
I've listened to plenty of my movies get shit on, so like just
not
brutally.
Not by me. That gives this movie. That gives this movie a composite score for us of 8.375. I believe IMDb has it as an 8, I think. So
It's It's 7.8, so we're
Oh,
above it.
7.8. Yeah.
Yeah.
as
I don't
with
know if I've ever said this before, but it's almost like we know what we're doing here and don't go out there.
Yeah. What the hell does IMDb know anyway? A bunch of bozos. This movie's clearly a 10.
Can't even spell IMDb.
Hey, Brian, cut that out.
Oh, I'm cutting a lot of shit out of this, Nico. I'm cutting a lot of shit out of this.
Yeah, we're gonna edit Nico's to instead of a 6, he's gonna end up saying 9.6, which is acceptable.
You're going to edit me out, not all the pervert talk all night.
That's right.
But Brian, I'm glad we got to review your favorite movie. I know I still remember what was it, Days of the Dead last year? We were walking through Atlanta and you saw the Ghostbusters guys, and I saw you was like, hey, and I kind of saw your eyes light up a little bit. So I'm glad we finally got to review your movie. So yeah, Mike, you want to announce your pick for next week? Any final thoughts on Ghostbusters before Mike does that?
No, good.
All right, so I guess we're switching themes to favorite movie month. So we're going to review American Pie 2 next month. Oh, sorry. No, we're going to go with horror comedy, although there would, I think getting peed on from a balcony is horror, but I'll save American Pie 2 for another show, I guess. No, we're going horror comedy route. I went with Shaun of the Dead, partially because I really like the film, and partially because we've covered Dawn of the Dead remake, and I think that as far as parodies go, this is about as damn good as a parody can get. I think it's fucking hilarious, and they do the horror parts well too. So I'm really interested to talk about it and see what you guys think. I know this movie has a lot of love, hate, depending on where you sit, and so I'm really, really excited to talk about it. Zombie movie's not my favorite, but I think they do a pretty good job.
Oh yeah, y'all got any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I just wanted to say I think you did a really good job of you did it justice reading the scene by scene. It was really weird how you cut out right when you were rating it. That was weird, but
weird.
the scene by scene was really
Weird.
Bro, I'm not lying. I was nervous for this one. I was like, I can't let these guys down. But we really appreciate all the support. Thank you for everyone who listens. We've dropped a couple interviews recently. I highly recommend you check them out. Philip Granger, he had a lot of cool stories about Bill Paxton, Jack Nicholson, Michael Douglas, and his career. Awesome. We had the horror icon himself, Mr. Don Shanks. He was on. Highly recommend you check that out. He's had some horrific injuries as a stunt man, and he's a badass guy. Check that interview out. And I think we got another one coming out later this week I think y'all will enjoy. Thank you for the support, everyone. Y'all have a good one. We'll be back next week. And just want to remind everybody to don't go out there.